Welcome back to the Courageous Pivot podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Telpner, and this is another fantastic episode, if I do say so myself. Today, I have my very own neuro-visual optometrist, Dr. Nikolakakis, on the show today. He is the one responsible for the giant rose-colored windshields I wear and call them glasses. When I walk into his office, he's like, "Oh, Mrs. Doubtfire's here." This conversation went so far deeper than I could have hoped and imagined. We both had so much fun during this conversation that we actually added on to it at the end. After I stopped recording, he said, "Can I take you through a timeline therapy process?" I was like, "Sure." So we did it, and that add-on is going to be available exclusively in the Inner Circle community, and you can find out more about that and subscribe over at courageouspivot.com. So please be sure to take advantage of that because it was wild. Here is Dr. Nick's official bio. Renowned for his expertise in leadership and personal growth, Dr. Nick combines the wisdom of ancient philosophies with modern psychology to deliver holistic and transformative experiences. His signature methods, the Soul Sight method and the Quantum Access method, guide individuals toward profound paradigm shifts, deeper self-awareness, and alignment with their values and vision. Dr. Nick's extensive credentials include certification as a hypnotherapy instructor, registered hypnotherapist, neuro-linguistic programming trainer, and timeline therapy master practitioner. He is also an American Board of Hypnotherapy approved School of Hypnosis. Additionally, Dr. Nick earned a Doctor of Optometry and a Bachelor of Science with honors in science from the University of Waterloo, showcasing his commitment to excellence in both scientific and human development. He's also the author of this book, Soul Sight, which I do recommend. It's not long. It's available on Amazon. But we go through in this conversation everything from what neuro-visual optometry actually is, all the way through to touching on the full potential of accessing the quantum. I adore this man. He's an amazing doctor. He's also a good friend. And again, we thoroughly enjoyed having this deep conversation with each other. And I hope you enjoy listening and take some valuable gems away with you because there is a lot in here. Enjoy the conversation. Dr. Nick, welcome to the Courageous Pivot podcast.
Thanks, Meghan. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so happy to have you here. There's a lot I want to talk about. First, can we talk about the giant windshields you have me wearing?
The giant windshields.
These glasses.
Giant orange windshields.
You said to me, well, when I came for a first assessment, I was really annoyed because you basically disclosed my entire personality, like all the baggage I like to just wear on my back, tightly zipped up. You did a couple tests on me and then completely dissected my entire existence. That's about accurate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're like, "I think you do well with rose-colored lenses in this world," and suggested I get the largest ones with like minimal frame. I'm like, I have just the thing. And so here we are.
Yeah. It's a lot of people get shocked with what we can pick up as neurovisual optometrists.
Yeah. So you started out, let's go back because you're not a conventional optometrist, but you started out, and I read somewhere that you knew from when you were 15 you wanted to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the only one in my family that needed to wear glasses or go to the optometrist. And every time I would see this guy, he would always make it exciting for me and explain certain things. And it was always cool, right? So it was actually sooner that I needed the glasses, but it was in grade 10 that people kept asking me, "What do you want to do when you get older?" And I knew I wanted to work with people and help with people. I just didn't know to what level. And I loved sports. So is it like chiropractic? Is it, sports medicine? And then I thought, okay, well, here's this guy that sits in a dark room talking to people all day long and impacting their lives. I thought, okay, well, I'll just take the optometry route. And that's when the decision was made.
So you practiced, let's call it conventional optometry, for how long?
It would have been up until about 2012, probably like 20 years. I mean, it was quite a while, and everything shifted when we had the kids.
Okay. So tell me what it was that shifted.
So my youngest son, so let me backtrack a little bit,
Okay.
because I used to say my life was always perfect, right? I mean, I was class valedictorian, captain of every team I was on, and, championship basketball team, football teams. And then we wanted to have kids. After we were married for 3 years, we decided we were going to have children. It wasn't as easy as we expected. So we were in infertility for, 3 years. So then we had Thomas, our oldest son. And then 3 years later, we had Michael and Gabriel, again, through a fertility clinic in Brazil. And we found out we were going to lose Michael because he had a congenital heart condition. And then Gabriel was born at 26 weeks, 2 years old. He got diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And then it was when a colleague came to the house and saw his body positioning. It's called an ATNR. As he was lying on the ground.
Sorry, what does ATNR stand for?
ATNR is a primitive reflexes.
Yeah.
So it's basically asymmetrical tonic neck reflex is what it's called. And I knew nothing about what these reflexes were, right? Because it's more of an occupational therapy type of thing or physiotherapy. But then I got introduced to the vision therapy component because it was actually Dr. Tai, a colleague, that said we can help him with vision therapy. And I'm thinking, what do eyeballs have to do with his body? And then it became research, looking into it, going to the States, training for a year and a half. Then I became a neuro-visual optometrist, and I realized how many kids we can help in the clinic. 25% of kids, and I think it's a low statistic, have a vision-related learning disability.
Right.
And then I found out how we can help people that have brain injury. And I had no idea how many people are walking around with brain injury issues. And then the other thing I found out is 80% of the brain is visual. And because of that, we can actually take a look at output mechanisms. So the testing that we did with you, for example, and then understand what's happening internally and why, people think we're reading the leaves and how did you know that about me? And, and all these other things.
What do you mean when you say the brain is 80% visual? Can you explain that more?
Yeah. So people confuse eyesight with vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Eyesight is what we see. Vision is what happens when the information goes to the back of the brain and then starts to get processed. And it's that processing that impacts or that it involves 80% of the brain. So pretty well every lobe in the brain is connected to the visual processing. Okay, it's how we give meaning to the world. It's how we actually experience what we see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, if I'm lecturing, I'll say somebody's watching the same movie, two people watching the same movie. Why is it that one person perceives it differently than the other? That's a processing that's going on. So when we understand that, and now the processing dictates the behavior or the external behavior that you see in an individual, right? So again, an example I give is if you're nervous, or if I was nervous coming onto this podcast, you're going to be able to see in the way that I'm expressing or my body positioning what like something's going on internally. And then there's a hunch that you're going to ask, are you okay? Like, are you nervous? How did you know that? Right. So it's external behavior. So it's body language that's going to be dictating what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Any other question? But that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I got lots of questions. So your book Soul Sight, which I read and loved, and I love that it's small enough to finish. It's like got all the essentials in it. You sort of breezed over the reality of what happened when your second and third children were born, that Michael passed away, and that Gabe had challenges that were not going to enable him to live the life that you'd envisioned for him. I think that we all envision for our children. And you wrote in your book, I realized the fear I felt wasn't meant to stop me. It was there to reveal me. It taught me that even in the chaos, we can find clarity. Prior to this, were you open-minded to, all of the things you do in your work about the integration of us as humans and our souls? Or did this start dropping in when you faced this huge, huge crisis and challenge?
Well, it's a great question. I've always had another part of me that I was fortunate enough that another friend of mine, really close friend of mine, got me involved in personal development. And he invited me to go to this one seminar. And I still remember because it was after one of our association meetings and I was exhausted. It was a 3-hour session. And he said, you need to be there. And I said, listen, I'm tired. I want to go home. He goes, no, you need to show up. Like, I want you to hear how this guy speaks on stage because it reminds me of you. And I ended up going, and it was incredible in terms of what he was teaching. You know, it was around money, but it's not the money. It's around money mindset and how we think and how we live and how important it is to have contribution as part of what we do. And it was amazing. Like the whole concept was amazing. That led me to take his second course, then third course. And then it just opened up a floodgates of me just totally intrigued, reading books and understanding human behavior and all the things that I really didn't like in school. So neurology was one of them because it was just way too much memorizing. And psychology, I almost failed our first year psychology course because it wasn't applicable for me.
Mm-hmm.
But now the application was there. I love the neurology. I love the psychology, the human behavior component. And then it just started me on a trajectory of learning about personal development and then getting trained in neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, mainly to communicate better because I taught at the university for 10 years. But then, you know, once all of this happened to me, or for me, actually, I started realizing, it was almost like I was preparing something or someone was preparing me to get to the point of integrating all my learnings and having access to vision at every level.
Was
So
this before your second two sons were born?
this is before all three of them were
Okay.
born. Yeah, this is way before. It was more of an interest, and I kept that side separate because, you know, as an optometrist, this is what we need to do, and this is what we're allowed to do and have these discussions. And then on the coaching side, it was always this little cubby hole that I would kind of do on the side. But I did use many, many techniques whenever I did teach because I obviously teach a lot in terms of the university, colleagues, conferences, that type of thing. But yeah, it's interesting how it all came together. Now, with regards to your question, I've always been a positive thinker. I've always looked at the positive in everything. You know, I was fortunate that, you know, I did have an incredible life growing up, amazing supportive parents, you know, a brother that sort of led and I could follow in terms of, you know, mentoring and sports and school and all these other things. But what I didn't realize is the impact that it had on me when I went to see the optometrist the first time. Because back then it wasn't cool to wear glasses, right? It's like now you're like, here's these big glasses in front of you that functionally are great. And, you know, they're cool because there's 70s and all that's back. But if you know, you're a little 8-year-old that has zero confidence internally, and now here's these frames and you're being called four eyes, you know, on the outside, I was the captain and I was always looking confident. On the inside, not so much sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's actually where the first hit came. And one of the things I always ask, and we can ask the viewers, it's something always blocks our creative at the ages of 6, 7, or 8. Okay. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be that, you know, you have to go to school, or you have to learn a certain way, or being told certain things. But the question is, what is it that happens for you at 6, 7, and 8? Okay. Because it's rare that something doesn't happen there. And have you realized that that's usually connected to the purpose of what's showing up now in terms of your life?
Oh,
Because they're usually very connected.
that's
And that's why I share my story.
That's interesting. I just got goosebumps. There's so much you said there that I've been doing these interviews now for 6 months, and almost everyone that I speak to uses certain phrases, like the shift of the challenge happening to them to happening for them and the gifts that come from it. And in the work of Dr. Lisa Miller, she's the author of the book, The Awakened Brain, she uses the term trail angel, which are these sort of random people that kind of pop into your life and make this suggestion, like, come see this speaker, like, you should read this book, you take this course, or these random people, a conversation in the grocery store that kind of sticks in your heart and you remember it later. And almost everyone also has 1 or 10 of these trail angels that they listen to that completely transform the trajectory, or you come back to the wisdom later and be like, oh, now I understand what that was.
Yep.
When did you start bringing the neurovisual work and shifting your practice to incorporate all of what you were learning?
Almost right away. And
Yeah.
I'll share a story which triggered me massively and sort of brought the emotional and the NLP side of my learning and the optometry part together, that I saw it all as one. And I was at a seminar, and one of my, the doc that was teaching basically was going over this procedure called column jumping. Okay. And all you're doing is there's 5 columns on the screen, and you jump and say what the first letter of the first column is. And then maybe the 4th column, you say the first letter of the 4th column, then you second letter of the first column, second letter of the 4th column, and so on and so forth, all the way down. And, I'm watching these columns, I'm looking at these columns. I'm like, okay, what's the big deal? A, B, C, F, D, no problem. And he said, you want to make sure that the child makes mistakes. So you want to push the speed, but no more than 20% errors. So one of my colleagues puts up her hand and says, how do you know if the child doesn't get 80% correct? Now, I didn't pick up that she actually changed the question. He did. And he picked up that she's asking the question because of the perfectionistic tendencies that she has.
Right.
And quickly brings her up and says, start now. And he didn't give her time to strategize. And this is what it sounded like. A, P, B.
Yeah.
And then he stops her and says, have a seat down. Do you have an answer to your question? And she totally collapsed at that point. And then when he called a break, I walked up to so the Greek in me is going, is this a trick chart? So I walked up to the chart. It was fine. Then I went to the lunchroom and I asked her, do you mind if I ask what was going on in your head when you were reading? And she totally broke down and started crying. Mm-hmm. And I felt really bad. And I said, I'm so sorry. She goes, no, it's fine. She goes, I have a label to my problem. I can't read. Now, she got 90s in optometry school. And you need to understand how much studying we did. And then I said to her, you're my hero. She goes, why? And I said, are you kidding me? I said, you got 90s in optometry school and you have a learning disability? And she said, but Stel, you don't understand. What took you 10 minutes took me 8 hours, and you have no idea what the emotional impact was on me. And that's when everything shifted. I came back to the office and I said to my team, every child is going to run the developmental eye movement test. It's a standardized test that we run free of charge. I want to make sure that this is legit and these statistics are real. They were lower than I expected, and one child after the other was showing up as a positive response. Then I was bought in. That's when it started. And we started doing the neuro-visual optometry. The second thing was COVID. When the pandemic hit, I could see that there was a lot of stress in the system, like a lot. And it was like 80% of the patients coming in.
When you say in the system?
In the visual system.
Okay.
I could see in the visual system that there was a stress response happening, and we're trained to do these screenings to pick up how much of the fight or flight or the stress response was showing up. And I was the only one that was asking patients, and they're like, how did you know that I was under this stress? One after the other. Then I turned to the team and I said, every single patient has a neurovisual screening. We're going to have a discussion at a much deeper level so that they can be seen, heard, and understood at a level that they've never experienced before. And then I haven't turned back since.
Wow. Okay. There's so much there, because when you started describing that visual test with the columns, I could feel my own anxiety rising up. And when you talk about like the patterns and the things that happen between 6 and 8 years old, and I'm going to talk about myself here because a lot of listeners know a lot about me already. They've been around. And that was when my anxiety around school performance started, having stomach aches before school. And I'm aware of the challenges I've had, and I'm aware of the coping mechanisms I've developed and the strategies I've developed to become an incredibly successful person by all the metrics we believe matter in our society, and the exhaustion that comes with it. But then when I think about, even having my own child, and that's what, in working with him more recently, is like, you want him to learn those strategies, but you also want to make it easier. But that's really what invites all of us to tap into our unique gifts, is recognizing the naturally occurring boundaries or barriers or whatever it is that we each uniquely manage ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's just so much now, like this, the labels everyone is assigning to themselves as a part of their identity, that, in my opinion, is incredibly damaging. So when you you brought this in, you started shifting how you practiced, how everyone in your practice practiced. Were you criticized by the wider optometry community? Were you getting, not at all?
What can I ask you a question with what you said? Because I think it's going to help
Sure.
promote the conversation in terms of what happened for you or what happened for us, right? So here you are at 6, 7, 8, and now you have this experience in terms of school and this visceral or whatever is happening in your stomach, right?
Yeah.
Can you see how that benefited you to who you are today and what you're doing, that now you had strategies that you created, that those strategies are actually supporting you in terms of your uniqueness?
Yes. I mean, ultimately, I ended up with Crohn's disease. So I think it got to an end stage situation. I mean, part of that was, medically induced through other interventions and stuff. But yes, I also think, being a child in the 80s, there weren't the same tools available. I think there could have been a less stressful path through it while also accepting, my circumstance exactly as it was, but that it didn't have to become so uncomfortable to go through. But, now sitting here 46, I'm like, it was fine. I'm glad I got to where I am today because today's awesome. But it's, you want to give enough tools, but also the space for children, adults, people at all stages to navigate themselves and find the answers and the tools they need when they're ready to receive them, which, I mean, ultimately, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? We receive what we need when we're open to it.
Yeah, it's, oh man, we can take this many directions. Okay, I'll ask a couple questions to the viewers, right? And to the listeners. And hopefully this stimulates conversation so that it benefits everybody that's listening. And the reason I love doing these podcasts is it's my passion for people to understand what's possible that's out there. And the amount of times that I hear, how come nobody knows about this, is so frustrating. And it's through podcasts like this that at least it can get scaled or exposed to a bunch of people. So here's where, and we're called neurodevelopmental optometrists. Okay, why the developmental component? Because your visual system develops. And if there's a breakdown in that development, now you have an inefficiency that shows up in a diagnosis or an issue. And I'll use ADD as an example. Okay, so the title of attention deficit disorder, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's over attentiveness, but that's a whole other conversation. Now, 80% of the symptoms, okay, the behavioral symptoms of ADD are identical to vision-related learning issues. Identical. So now here's the question. If it's a vision problem that can then be supported, then why wouldn't we test for the visual component? Because if that's the case, then 80% of the symptoms of what they call ADD are going to be removed.
Right.
Okay, so that's the first question is, how many viewers have ADD type tendencies? And that child that had that frustration in school, because let's say, for example, they did have these ADD tendencies, are going to do two things. One, strategize differently in order to get the results, which may not necessarily be the most efficient, right? Because emotionally it might impact them, or they collapse.
Right.
Now, when they choose the strategy component, they are usually the brightest entrepreneurs or, people that do things differently in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes the ones that collapse are the ones that are the best artists and musicians. Okay, because they go inside and they figure out what they need to, and then it gets expressed in a form that now it's like, wow, look at the magic that they've created. Okay, now people see the result, but they don't understand where it came from and the trials and tribulations that it took to get there. Okay, now with regards to the 6, 7, and 8, okay, one question I ask a lot now is how many of you remember before the age of 7? And you'd be surprised the results of how many go, I have no idea anything that happened before the age of 7. But here's the gift. It's not conscious in terms of what they remember, but it's always unconscious. Okay. And if that's the case, there's a developmental opportunity that got shoved down into that subconscious space of let's forget about this for now. But once it comes to awareness or to the surface as we get older, there's a gift there that actually can lead it to somebody's purpose and unique gifts.
Interesting.
Okay. And this is
Fascinating. Yeah.
why when instead of saying, oh, the poor thing that happened, my whole thing is, wait a second here. What is the amazing opportunity and what is it that they have access to? And why don't we hold the space in terms of what the child's potential is and then start reconnecting and rewiring and re-engaging the visual system that wasn't efficient at that point in time.
Right.
Okay. So let me leave that with you right now, see how that processes. And then
I want to ask you something that I actually read in some of the materials you gave us recently about regressions that happen through puberty. So when children have these challenges, 6, 7, 8, and they figure out ways to function, say in elementary school, they move on to middle school, they go through puberty, and then there's like this other wave of diagnoses that come through. How much of that, or what have you seen in your own practice, is actually like a regression back to what that initial challenge is, but their coping mechanisms are no longer working right for them?
oh, it's a great question.
Thanks.
It's a really good question. Okay. On the developmental side, in terms of as human beings, okay, and we touched on a little bit of primitive reflexes. They're basically survival mechanisms. Okay, so one of the ones that parents know well is the moral reflex, or what we call the rooting reflex. The rooting reflex is when the baby goes, to the boob and needs to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the moral reflex, if you throw a baby up in the air, it protects itself by throwing its arms and legs out, so that if there's a landing, then the brain is protected, and so on and so forth. We also have emotional reflexes. Okay, so anger, sadness, hurt, fear, guilt, like all these emotions we have to have. The reason is, if we didn't take on fear and we didn't take on guilt, we'd kill someone else or we would kill ourselves. I mean, it's a protective mechanism until we're old enough to understand what's good, bad, and so on and so forth. But if we don't know how to integrate all these things, as we get older, they become more intense. Okay, and there's certain key moments in life, and puberty is one of them, where the intensity starts to increase, and now identity gets impacted. And there's two key ages of developmental ages. One is 7, and the other one's around 14.
Mm.
Okay, and it's really easy to explain sort of from a construct of religion, and that's why bar mitzvahs, like christenings, like there's all these ages that show up in a way for most people to understand. And now I can put it in a sense of what happens with emotional development in those key ages. Okay, so from 0 to 7, we call it the imprint period because our unconscious minds are wide open. So these are the times when we play with dolls and cars and everything's real, and we have like the tooth fairy and Santa Claus, and woo, we're in like dreamland. Okay, so unconscious is open. At 7 is the point where the modeling period starts to occur. What's our teacher saying? What do our parents tell us? Which parent am I listening to? Which one am I not listening to? So we model, right? So there's certain areas in life, like we model in health, in protection, in self-image. Usually there's somebody that we're modeling or something that we're modeling, and sometimes not. We model ourselves. But at 14 is where the socialization period starts to occur now. Okay. And how do we socialize within a group? What is it that we need to do? Are we introverted? Are we extroverted? How are we? So we start to form the us, the who am I? Okay. And we identify now. So the identity is now dictating our behavior. Okay. So one of the questions I'll ask in lectures, and I got this from one of my coaches, Lee Brower, who was in The Secret. He says, I'm gonna say 2 words, and you're gonna finish with 1 or 2 words, and it's gonna be instinctive. You're just gonna respond. And the 2 words that I will say is I am. How do you respond?
Oh, am I supposed to play this game?
Or the listeners, right? So I am,
Right.
and then the question is, how do you respond?
Yeah.
Now imagine being 6, having a learning issue, right? And you say I am. I'm stupid. I can't read. Like all these limiting beliefs start coming up that we believe in who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But those are also the gifts that then start to shift to say, holy cow, without this learning disability, I wouldn't understand what it's like for other kids to have a learning issue. And all of a sudden now you become, speech therapist or, learning resource teacher, that type of thing. And it stemmed from the issue that happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if you look at a developmental standpoint, I mean, I don't want to get into the hormones, but anything could trigger a change. But if we then hold on to these emotions, or we hold on to these limiting beliefs longer and longer and longer, it puts more and more tension on the system. Okay. And it's usually our body that speaks to us as the tension increases. And that's why the mind-body connection is so close. And the book is phenomenal. I can't remember the author's name now, but the mind-body connection is a great, great, great book explaining how the emotions are connected to the physical body itself. IBS is a big one that we see a lot in the clinic, right? So if it's not Crohn's,
Well, I
then
got the IBS diagnosis first, right?
okay.
You know,
So there you go.
it
Right.
wasn't bad enough yet.
Yeah.
Hadn't worked it really into the core. It was still very surface.
Yeah. It's usually in quick response to your question, usually there's a root that happened way before the actual issue starts showing up. And yes, coping mechanisms that don't work anymore is one of the things. Life experiences and more life experiences that at some point we can't handle them as much show up. Physical responses, IBS turning into Crohn's disease, and now you can't, you have to deal with it. Like it's all part of development, and depending on where everybody's at.
Right. So we have these reflexes developing at different stages or different, I don't know what the word would, but like mostly in utero, and then nature and nurture kind of seals the deal in some ways. When you had people coming in during COVID with, overwhelmed nervous systems, which I think it remains. I don't think anyone has, unless they've actively made the effort, has downregulated. Like everyone is still in the reptilian brain, which I think is why we're seeing the state of the world as it is today and the state of divisiveness and community and all these things. What can someone do who recognizes themselves in this? Like, what's like one thing someone can do that's like, oh, that's better now?
Your questions are so good. I got so many different avenues to take it. Okay, so let's stay simple.
I still haven't checked my notes. This is just what's coming from your wisdom. I got like 40 questions I haven't gotten to.
So there's the physical body's the easy way to answer the question. Movement. Go for a walk. Like the physical body's the easy way to access the stress response. I mean, I would probably go one step before that. And I think awareness would be the key thing that needs to happen. And once you have an awareness that you're stressed out or you're not, something's just not right within your system. Now the next question is, okay, what do you do with it? How do we sort of get out of a funk? Okay. And the reason it's tough for me to answer this, because there's a lot of funk that's happening right now. But remember, I'm the guy that can always see the positivity in everything. So now if there's this many people in the world that are this stressed out, that have to deal with unconscious emotions that are coming to the surface. Okay. So again, here's a question I was asked, like, how many of you experience sadness or anger and you don't have no idea where it's coming from? It's like, why am I getting so emotional watching this movie now? I never used to be this way. Or why do I get so angry at, I never used to be this way. It's neurological. Okay. And one of the things that a lot of us don't understand is what is it that our autonomic nervous system's responsibilities are. Okay. So you have your sympathetic, you have your parasympathetic, you have your autonomic nervous system that has certain, things that it's responsible for. And in sort of coaching language, we say the conscious versus the unconscious mind. Okay, so now you have your conscious mind, that is your analytical mind. It's the, the reasoning, verbal reasoning, the way that we speak, the way that we communicate. But nobody really understands the prime directive, the purpose of the unconscious mind. Okay, and to make it simply, the first one is to protect the body. Okay, first and foremost. And that's why when we sleep, we don't think about it. It's your autonomic nervous system kicking in, and you breathe. You keep breathing. If you cut yourself, you don't think about, healing. The body does it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first and foremost thing. The second thing is it stores emotions. Okay, so we have all these emotions that get stored, and some of them are big. When it happens, it's like, oh my God, okay, this isn't protect the body right now. Hide this stuff. And this is why some people can't remember before the age of 7. Way too intense. Drive that stuff to the basement. Maybe one day they'll be ready for it. Right now, hide it because it's no good for the body. If it comes to awareness, we got problems. Okay. The third thing is it brings those emotions to the surface when it's ready and it's time. Or if somebody gets a brain injury, there's a lot of emotions that come to the surface that they weren't ready for, and now they don't know how to deal with them. Now, any form of trauma, including a global pandemic, will bring emotions to the surface that sometimes people don't know how to handle.
Right.
But when we look at it and say, but if we do, imagine what's possible if we can reframe all that stuff to understand why it's happening for all of us at the exact same time. We good? So
Great.
Back to your question, the easy way is physical movement. So it's exercise, go for walks, do all these things that the physical body can now move, because the physical and the emotional bodies are highly connected.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why certain yogas, music will allow for there to be some type of an expression, and people start crying even when they're running and they don't know why. Okay. But that's the one thing to do. Anything that's going to trigger a parasympathetic response. Yoga, meditation, having these deep conversations where there's a connection at a deeper level, massage therapy. Like, there's just so many things that we can then start becoming aware of to do one little thing at a time. Nutrition's a big one. Okay. Eating well, making sure that the energy that we take in is going to be efficient, not like chips and chocolate bars and all the nonsense that our body can't respond to.
Yeah.
And the key thing is to pay attention to your energy. Okay. You're doing it right. Okay. Because everybody asks, how do we do it? It's different for everybody. But when your energy starts increasing and you have more of it and you start feeling good, that's how you know you're going in the right direction.
Right. It's so interesting because, like, in the society and the paradigm we're in, to eat well, sleep well, move your body, maybe even fast once in a while, it's all seen as like, well, that's drastic. And it's the hard wiring that's built into us to restore us. We've got everything we need to heal.
Yeah. Look, you asked the question before, did I get ostracized with all this neurovisual stuff? Okay. And, was it happening at the beginning? 100%. I mean, we had these complaints at our college from, any complaint they have to address, right?
I feel like as soon as there's a complaint filed against you to your college, assuming you haven't misbehaved, then you're doing something right.
So here's exactly right. And here's these anonymous complaints that happened, and we kind of know who was doing it. And anyways, it's a whole other different story. But those are when you know you're doing it right, because you're being noticed.
Yeah.
Now you can either take it as victim and go, I can't believe this is happening to me, or you can go, this is kind of cool. It's getting out there. It's not, the most fun way of getting noticed, but heck, it is. Now, here's the reason it didn't impact me at all. Okay. I know why I do what I do, and I have results in the form of my son, who was told he wasn't going to see, he wasn't going to hear, he wasn't going to walk, he's going to be in diapers for the rest of his life. Okay. Everything that, we were told when he was 2 weeks after he was born. Okay. And at that point, the athlete in me went like hell. He sees perfectly fine now. He has no prescription. He hears perfectly well, even though all auditory testing shows that he has profound and severe hearing loss. And sick kids has no idea why. But the point that I want to make to the listeners is, when you understand your purpose and your why you're doing what you're doing, it's almost irrelevant. It's actually comical sometimes when you get challenged, because it's like, okay, well, prove to me why he can hear.
Yeah.
Prove to me why he can see. Right? If the why's in place, you're good.
Does Gabriel, does he speak?
Yeah, he's a global ambassador to 2 global organizations, and he's on stages all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So, he's doing amazing things. And again, here's this child with this disability that was told that, your life is basically going to be nothing, to having massive global impact. He was actually at the Maple Leafs game on the ice with the Leafs during the national anthem a couple of weeks ago, promoting Hockey Fights Cancer. Right. I mean, it just happened to be that day. It's not that, we're connected to cancer in any way, but any give back initiatives, like Holland Bloorview is doing amazing things. And he's a global ambassador with the Holland Bloorview Rehab Hospital. But he's my hero. He shows me what's possible. And he's 13 years old.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I mean, it's also a testament to defying all odds just by asking questions. Like, it's the questions you're sort of not supposed to ask that usually reveal the most truth. And it's like, and you wrote this too, that I'll paraphrase, but when instinct overrides doubt is where the transformation is.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
you did and follow. You're like, obviously he's going to do all these things. Like you knew.
Okay. 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 I'm going to go with this. Intuition is actually a visual process that we can prove happens in the brain that is a non-sight pathway.
Because I would argue that intuition is something that happens in the heart.
Well, it's connected, right?
Okay.
Your limbic system is also connected to the visual system.
Okay, tell me.
But there's a pathway. So when light comes into the eye, hits the retina then transfers information to your occipital lobe, and then it goes into the visual cortex and then it gets processed. Okay, that's the sight pathway. There's another pathway that goes to what's called the tectum, okay, and then transfers to what we call the parietal lobe. And then it's called the pulvinar path, the tectopulvinar pathway, which is actually an intuitive visual pathway. And we call it blind sight. Proven.
Interesting.
Okay? So now you say, if you trust your inner vision or your intuition and you have clarity on it. So what happens, you say, okay, can you imagine what the world would look like if anything was possible? You can dream, and we're going to create a nice vision board that is important to you. The second that you put that vision in front of you, okay, and then the intuition in your heart, the feeling fuels that vision, your brain is on and your brain's looking for it.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That's why vision boards work. But the key thing, and you said it, you said, I would argue if intuition's a heart thing. It is. It's all connected. But the way that you turn it on is you visualize first, then you put the feeling to it as if it's happened already. Mm-hmm. Okay, now what happens is you fuel the unconscious mind to look for it when it shows up, because it's always there. Right. Everything's always there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting the way you describe it, because I sometimes sort of jokingly say that I wear these glasses because I know too much and I see too much and I need just a little buffer so that I can keep caught up. It's like, I don't want to know all this. I don't want to see these things. But at least when it comes in through a rose-colored lens, it's a little easier to take. But the explanation of that makes sense. And I think that that's also, I do a lot of research and work with the Heart Math Institute, like the idea of getting into that state of coherence and how we can, from that, move into the prefrontal cortex, which obviously I know when I do meditation retreats, when I am in nature, I don't need glasses for days after. It's like, I've gotten my fill and everything is filled up. The right things are filled up. It's so fascinating.
By the way, this is another way for people to get out of that sympathetic fight or flight response.
What is another way?
So as soon as you start talking about the meditation retreats, not needing the glasses, all these things, your body responding, going, okay, you're in parasympathetic right now. We're good.
Yeah. Yes.
But retreats, connectedness, reading, research, all these things that you're talking about right now are other examples of getting out of that fight or flight response.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love doing this podcast, because I love an excuse to have these conversations. And like, I couldn't get you for an hour and a half to dive deep into this. I'd have to book an appointment. Who wants to do that? I want to ask you, you had people coming in during COVID, and something else that I thought was fascinating, you told me this the first time we met during COVID, is you got invited to an Orthodox Shabbat, and you're not Jewish. How did that come about, and what was that?
Well, talk about trail angels.
Yeah.
That was a huge pivot for me. And it was interesting because we were all locked in our houses, right? Like, we had nowhere to go. And a friend of mine. Some of us just. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Some of us pretended.
Some of us took off every week to go to Shabbat dinners with. Anyway, so there was a friend of mine who's Greek, and he would meet with his friend who's a rabbi. And then this rabbi introduced him to these two young entrepreneurs, Orthodox Jewish entrepreneurs. And he would come back and he was like, oh my God, you never guess. It was an unbelievable conversation. You have to come. He goes, and you have to meet my rabbi. And I was like, your rabbi? Did you convert? He goes, no, he's a friend of mine, but I call him my rabbi. And I said, what are you guys doing? He says, well, I met these two 29-year-old guys. They're amazing. We have these great conversations. You have to come. So let me get this straight. So you meet with a rabbi and two 29-year-olds at 6:00 at night on a Saturday night and stay with them for hours and have conversations. Yeah, no thanks. But anyways, after a couple of weeks of COVID, I had to get out. And he says, you want to come with me? I said, let's go. And I went. And I walked into, his name's Mo, but walked into his house and he had this beautiful library of all these ancient books. It was amazing. And I walked into the library because it was incredible. And he started explaining how it was all the ancient books that he studies, the Talmud and the Gemara and all these. And I went, what do you mean you study? He goes, every morning for 2-3 hours from like 5 till 8, he's studying. And I'm like, you're 29 years old and you study books from 5 till 8. Now my curiosity kicked in. I said, what exactly did you study? And he started explaining the concept of how these metaphors or these stories impacting him and how he transfers that into his life. And then I said to him, it's interesting. It's like the same way we're taught neuro-linguistic programming in terms of the power of the metaphors. And then it ended up being a conversation for 9 hours, literally from 6 in the morning till 3 in the morning, 6 at night till 3 in the morning, every week for 4 months. And it was life-changing because we were having deep discussions, philosophical discussions, almost like I could imagine ancient philosophers were having like hundreds of years ago. And I didn't realize the impact that it made until it was both of them. But they were saying, we have ADD. And I looked at him and I said, with this surprised look, he goes, well, you don't believe in ADD? I said, it's not that I don't believe in it. I said, but for sure you have a vision problem. And I did this process with him that took about 5 minutes. And, he stood up. He's like, what the hell did you do to me? I said, I didn't do anything. He goes, it's like, not needing glasses after the retreat, right? Like he's all of a sudden, he's like, how do I see so much? And then that sparked curiosity where he wanted to know more and more about what I do. And a lot of the coaching is pretty deep and personal. It's intense sometimes. So I moved away from it because it was just too much. And then he's the one that took me out of retirement to say, okay, you need to do more of this stuff. And then once I did the coaching process with him, or the quantum access method that you read in the book, he just looked at me and said, there's no way this shouldn't be in all the schools. Okay, we need to get this out there. And I didn't realize how tight the Orthodox Jewish community was, but then he's connecting me to everybody that's connected to the educational system and so on and so forth. And then it just exploded. And that's my number one client base now in the world. So
really?
In the world.
It's funny because my vision of Orthodox Jewish men, everyone has glasses. Like it's like part of the uniform. It's like we're going to stop seeing them and we'll know how we'll stop seeing them in glasses and we know where that came from. It's like Dr. Nick got to the Orthodox community. It's going from here to New York to Israel. It's just going to spread. Can you explain what the quantum access method is?
Yeah. So people ask me now, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I always say I change lives through vision. Okay. And then that usually prompts nothing because they're not listening, or they'll say, what do you mean?
It prompts nothing because they're not listening.
Well, yeah, because you say, how are you? They're not really listening to what you're saying. They're just like robotic, just saying, how are you? How's it? Great, right? Yeah. But certain ones will say, well, you're an optometrist, right? Yeah. Well, how does optometry change lives? And then it becomes a deeper conversation. And then I say with the quantum access method is a way to change vision through the limbic or the emotional system. Okay. And as an optometrist, as a neuro-visual optometrist, we do the same thing with lenses and filters like the ones you're wearing right now to start stimulating the visual system neurologically inside somebody's brain, right? Now, what the quantum access method is I've learned what collaboration is to work with other incredible people that are doing unbelievable things to tap into how the visual system could change within each individual. Okay. And the easiest way that I can put it in one sentence is to create a compelling vision of the future by reframing the past to be more present now. Okay. Now I'll break it down a little bit more, but our past includes what we talked about, which is negative emotions, limiting decisions. It's part of development, right? Certain diagnoses, ADD and everything else. And once we start learning that things that happened to us, okay, actually happened for us, now we have the opportunity to reframe it to understand for what purpose did it happen. That's the reframe.
Yep.
Okay. And once that gets reframed, okay. And in my book, I use the acronym SIGHT, soul sight, because sight is not sight like what we see. It's broken down to 5 segments. One is to survey the cracks. In other words, to have the discussion with yourself or with someone that you trust. What were your cracks? What is it that broke you? What is it that you've gone through that you may or may not know yet? Because there's a gift there. Okay. And then once we're open to it, to say, okay, I'm curious now. Did that happen for me? And if it did, the I, so S is survey the cracks, the I is investigate your unconscious. Okay, now you're willing to do a little bit of deep diving to understand what the I ams are that you were running back then, what hurt, what guilt, what fears, all these other things, and where they may have started. That's why you need a coach.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't do it on your own. You need someone to hold a safe space for you to start investigating in such a way to start going, I never thought about that. Okay, and then the G, so once you investigate it, now you have to grasp. So G is grasp the identity of the truth of who you are, not who you think you are. Okay, the event happened to give you an idea of who you think you are, but then once you start grasping the identity and understanding the purpose of what happened, now you go, so that's why I am strong. For that purpose, I am smart, I am intelligent. That's the truth that starts organizing itself. Then H is harness the energy. Now there's a different part. This is why I mentioned pay attention to the energy when there's a shift, and now all of a sudden you feel good. Harness that, because now all of a sudden you have energy that never existed before. You're like, this is amazing. And then the T is transform the future with it. Okay, so the quantum access method is a method to allow people to go through that process and to be able to hold that space for an individual that's ready to then experience the parts of their greatness and then to discover what their purpose and vision is.
So in relation to, what I keep coming back to with all my conversations is this pivot that we make to live in alignment with who we are today and who we are becoming. I use a basic assumption that our lives today are 5 years behind where our soul already has landed.
Minimum.
Yeah, right. But so this is one way of looking at that as why we stay stuck, because we carry these unconscious beliefs about who we are, and in most cases, what we're not capable of being or doing or becoming. And so we look around and be like, well, I guess this is as good as it's going to get, even though we're dealing with chronic anxiety, depression, irritability, frustration, fear, all these, reptilian brain emotions. And yet somehow we believe that discomfort is still more comfortable than risking our own evolutionary process.
Yeah. I mean, it's I use the analogy inside my book where I talk about the operating room when they called for the C-section of the twins.
Yeah.
And again, it was probably one of the most traumatic times because they kept me outside. They said, we need to prep your wife. They kept me outside this dark hallway. It was 7:00 at night. Nobody was there. I'm alone. And I have no idea what I'm going to experience going through those doors. And you can imagine what's going on in my head, right? I mean, it's like the survival kick in. I got to make sure that the other baby lives. I mean, it was just like, but I use the metaphor because there's so many of us that have these doors, right? And it's the fear of the unknown of what's on the other side, right? And us running our programs and the fear of what ifs and and then the easy thing is just to stay there, because then at least you're sure, you have certainty of where you are. Even though it's dark, I'm certain that I'm here. I have no idea what's going to happen through those doors. And now there's this uncertainty that's there. Okay. And, at some point, this goes back to your purpose and why, once you discover that you have this purpose and you have to go through those doors, that's what then drives, holy cow, look what's on the other side. And a lot of times it's like, oh my God, that's it. Shoot, I should have crossed these doors before. But sometimes you cross, you're like, oh boy. And you can't undo it, but you know that that's the next evolution of who you need to become in order to then go into this purpose that your soul is looking for, right? So you said at least 5 years ahead. And one of the things I just want to share that came up as you were speaking, my last chapter, I write down, quantum access is about alignment. So it's aligning your nervous system with your purpose. Okay. It's aligning your internal story with your external reality. Okay. And then it's finally aligning who you think you are with who you truly are. Okay. And then that's sort of the process of being able to say, look, I know I have a deeper purpose in there. Okay. Because we all have a soul purpose, soul unique ability, soul unique gifts. Okay. It's almost downloaded and we're born with it. But what happens is those of us that have a deep purpose, deep, unique gifts also have the deep challenges. Okay. And the covers start to occur. And we forget about what our soul purpose is and what's there. It's always sitting there.
Yeah.
But then the emergence starts to occur when we have the courage to start discovering all these things in terms of alignment and then doing things based on purpose, which then gives us the courage to drive through those doors and the next set. Now, there's 3 major doors in your life that once you cross will discover your greatness. 3. So if you can take an inventory of how many times you've been clobbered in life, okay, the closer you are to 3, the more you're going to discover the gold.
You mean like 3 hits and you're ready? Is that what you mean?
3 hits and you're
3
ready.
strikes
Yeah.
and you're in?
Well, yeah. So this is the opposite. 3 strikes and we're good to go. Not that you're out.
That's
But
interesting.
it's 3 major strikes in life will help you discover your greatness. And it sounds crazy, but it's so true. And if you think about it, all the things that I have now came from those hits, right?
But I mean, couldn't you argue that like what if there's another one and you're like, oh no, like do I have to go through another cycle of 3? Like, am I just going to wait for the other 2 shoes to drop?
It's more
like I guess does it have to be so painful?
no, but unfortunately the way that again society's set up in such a way that doesn't allow us to evolve, and that's why I get so excited to work with 6-year-olds.
Right.
It's like, imagine you come in to see me at 6 years old and being able to then work your system in a way that you can emerge, gently instead of waiting till we're in our, 40s, 50s and going, holy cow, if I had known this back then. But it's also part of our development. It's who we are, because then you say, well, what happens if we did take care of this stuff when you were 6? Would you be who you are now? I don't know.
I know.
So it's embracing the fire. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not just kind of going, yay, this is what happened to me. I've done it at 20%. Let's move on to the next one. No. It's embracing the challenge in such a way to say, let me sit in this, have people to hold the space for me, go deep in terms of the depth of the learnings so I can really dig up the gold. Oh, now I have resources so that I can maintain a resourceful state so I can get into my deeper purpose and understanding, why I was born. Or, they always say the 2 most important days in your life is the day that you were born and the day you discovered why. Right? It's so true. Right.
Yeah.
But it sounds cool as a statement. It's a whole different animal when you're going through it going, what is going on here?
I mean, every time I enter the tunnel, I'm just like, really? Like things were just going good. Like it was just working itself out. Like I got to do this again. And I'm old enough, I think just old enough now to recognize that.
Is it the same tunnel? Would be my question. Is it a similar tunnel?
Well, it's gotten less scary. There's way more trust and faith that the answers will come. There's slightly less impatience. I want everything right away. But, you gain confidence over time. And again, so many of the people I've spoken to on the show, they've had one big shift in their life, and then it's just a series of micro shifts because they're more tuned into it. So they see them coming, they know what they got to do or know how to work through the process more efficiently and know that it doesn't actually have to be so dramatic and chaotic and painful every time. But, for me, my last one of closing down my company, having to lay off my whole team, like emotionally, it was hard in that way, but the liberation was instantaneous.
So I just want to say a story in terms of why I'm prompting the question, right? Because it's there's so much depth to what shows up in our life that we need to go deeper into what it is that we need to learn from it. Otherwise, it keeps showing up, not as intense because we've done the work, but it'll just keep showing up. But it's the same issue. And this is the gift that I have working with the Orthodox Jewish community. It was a big one. A lot of the emotions that then trigger our behavior, okay, can get transferred down through epigenetics. Okay. And I don't want to get the science behind it, but it's true.
Yes.
And now you have, these events, that's massive events that happens with certain cultures. The Holocaust is one of them, with what shows up with the Orthodox Jewish clients that I have. Now, here's the thing. We don't know what happened back then in terms of what transferred through, but we do know that, let's say, for example, sadness or anger may have occurred and then epigenetically transferred down that line. Okay. So if we take care of our sadness and our anger in our lifetime, then yes, it will be improved, but we haven't really taken the depth of understanding the root cause. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can get there is for your mind to be literally in an unconscious state. Okay. And once you go back to where that root cause occurred and then it gets reframed, now you have a deeper understanding of the situation where now you can own the gift of the learning, and you don't need to hold on to those emotions anymore for them to keep showing up in a form of betrayal or abandonment or whatever it is that was showing up for centuries and not knowing why. This might be a deeper conversation, but I think it's important for people to know when I say, like, here's an event that happened that's intense, it's being in it at the depth of understanding self in ways that isn't typical of us thinking we know how to deal with it.
Right.
Okay. And those are the aha moments that come up and like, oh my God, I never even thought about it that way.
I just finished this like super out there book. We'll just say that. It's called The Synchronicity Key by David Wilcox, where he talks about how humanity's basically in 25,000 year cycles, and we just keep repeating the same painful lessons till enough of us wake up to recognize that we can live in peace and love and harmony. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now, that they're, when they talk about the Great Awakening, that it's not like a conspiracy fringe thing. It's an actual shift that's happening in human consciousness, that you and I are having this conversation, that so many people are in this, I used to refer to it after COVID of like the Rubik's Cube, like everything just people moved, shifted jobs, like everything, everybody had something recalibrate. And it seems to me that those that are now finding ways to thrive are those that were able to flow with that recalibration. And those that have resisted it are the ones experiencing the most pain and suffering and discomfort.
Yeah. And that's why I mentioned before, I used to think I was just being positive. It's not that I'm being positive. I could see what the other side looks like, right? So this many of us that are stuck in this like turmoil of stress and all these other things that are going on gives awareness at a much higher level to say, okay, what happens if enough of us reframe where we're at and truly connect in terms of love, connection, all the great, higher frequency and emotions. But it's a massive possibility for awakening right now. Massive.
Do you think that you need to revisit your own trauma to move forward?
Always.
You do?
Always, always, always. Like, it's one thing I always say is nothing's real. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, and again, I can even have a discussion scientifically how we basically project everything. Right. So it takes, 1.2 milliseconds for information to hit the back of your eye to get processed by the brain. Well, if that's the case, then what's real? It's already happened. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's if, to have philosophical conversations. But now you say, okay, hold on a second. If we make the assumption that everything that's happening outside of us is just a projection of what's going on internally, right? That goes to Gandhi's statement, be the change you want to see in the world. You start working with your story and what you've gone through and the gifts that lay inside. Right. Now you can see the possibilities in the other person and what their gifts are and what's available to them. Mm-hmm. Not the other way around. Okay. And my chapter 10 is talking about the helpers, how, the helpers help others. And, especially in the medical community, like, 99% of us, if you ask us why we do what we're doing, we're going to say to help people. Right now, our behaviors don't necessarily show up that way because the system doesn't allow it to fully express. But now the question is, if we're helping everybody else all the time to discover what they need to, who helps us?
Right.
And then at some point you help everybody else, but now you're missing a key ingredient. Probably the key ingredient is who am I? Like, what do I need to discover about me? Okay? Massive. Like it's
hard work. And I
yep.
think some people think that it can also be like, can come across as self-indulgent work to spend so much time thinking about yourself. I'd be curious your take on that view of it.
Look, there's a lot of talk about, self-care and self-love and, self, right? Everything to me is around intention. Like, what's the intention of you self-caring,
Yeah.
right? If your intention is because you're burnt out and now you have to be less burnt out, do what you need to do. But that's not what this is.
Yeah.
When somebody says, look, I'm going to do what I need to do to be the best version of who I am, or the authentic version of who I am, it's the most selfless thing that you can do. And the reason I'm saying that is because if that's the case, that authenticity now impacts everybody else that you come in contact with, especially those that you love the most. Okay. And then again, our children pay attention to our behavior and they see what and who we are. And it's not what we say. 80% is what we do and how, the behaviors and how they show up. Well, if you're running unconscious programs of not your authentic self, you're not good to anybody. I mean, it's okay. And then you get back into I need to go to the spa now to take care of the stresses that have been put on for God knows how many years. Right. So to me, like when you say I'm going to do whatever I can to be the best version of who I am and the most authentic person of who I am, it's actually massively selfless. It's not selfish at all.
When you approach patients and say things to them like you said to me, like, you got to let go more.
I said that. Yeah.
You said, I was something like, I don't know what or why you're holding on so tightly, but you have to let go more. And you weren't the first to say that. I had a tarot card reader say it. I've had a lot of people say it, especially at that phase of my life, which was when I had to let go of the business I'd built. And you have a natural way of, you get a rapport with people very quickly. What's some of the most common resistance you get, and how do you deal with it when you can see, pardon the pun, but like a clear path forward for someone to live a more easeful, more authentic expression of themselves, and they are like, unable to focus their eyes close up and then far away and all the little tricks you play?
Meanie. These are awesome questions. They're really good because there's so many different angles we could take on it. Okay, so let's stay with you, right? Like the one thing that I've learned, okay, so Greek, Jewish, we tend to do this. I'm stereotyping a little bit, but we tend to be very direct, right? But one of the things that I've learned is to hold a safe space or container for the other person to discover what they need to when they're ready.
Right.
Okay. And the way that happens is when they feel seen, heard, and understood, then all of a sudden it's like there's an opening that occurs, and then there's a way to be able to hold that space. And that's what we do with any type of good therapies like that, where they'll say something and go, I just realized something. Okay. Because you can imagine now, come on, Meghan, just let go. Blah, 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 blah. Really? It's not going to happen. And I'll tell you why. The first thing that needs to occur is safety. Okay. So first it's rapport, right? So you have being seen, heard, and understood. So all of a sudden now, like I'm doing an eye evaluation, you're like, why is this dude telling me about letting go, which is the same thing that I've heard before? And what's he doing as an optometrist now? So now, you're questioning, but at the same time, it's like, that's kind of cool. I'm in an eye exam and this dude seeing, hearing, and understanding me at a deeper level. So now the safety factor starts to open up. Okay, so safety is number one. Once the safety occurs, then it's easier for the individual to be vulnerable, whether they're going to be vulnerable to themselves to say, holy cow, I just thought of something. Or what I hear a lot is, I don't know why, but I need to tell you this. Big. Okay. Or another one. I've never told anybody this before, but something tells me. So this is the intuition speaking now. This is unconscious intuition coming to surface. At that point, safety has switched over where it's safe enough that there's an openness to the vulnerability. Okay. Once vulnerability comes through now, and I'll talk frequencies now. Low frequencies are fear, sadness, hurt. Okay. And there's a great book called Letting Go. What's the author's name? Hawkins, I think. David Hawkins. Great book to explain what frequencies we run at. So if you're running fear, for example, and that's what created the control or not willing to let go, it's a low frequency protective mechanism. So now safety allows there to be an opening. Vulnerability allows there to be some type of an expression. And now the fear has subsided a little bit where hope sets in, or I've been heard, I've been understood. The frequency has just changed and it's elevated. We good? So now you're vulnerable, you open up, and I'm like, Meghan, I have a story that I want to tell you that just hit me. This is Talmudic, okay? And I don't want to get into Orthodox Jewish principles, but it's cool because now it's like I'm just telling you a story that is resonating with me because I can sense that we're running at a similar frequency now where I say a story and you're like, oh my God, it's happening during this podcast, by the way. So the frequency set at a certain level that we're having discussions that I may not discuss otherwise. You're keeping the safety for me. Okay. So now once the vulnerability is there and then there's a deeper understanding going, oh my God, you just said something that made me realize something even more now. And I'll call it intimacy or a better way, deep connection starts to show up. Okay. So once that deep connection happens, authentic expression starts coming through. This is I never told anybody this before. And what's happening as I'm speaking to you, there is a letting go because it's not letting go of a problem. It's letting go to a higher frequency of awareness. It's letting go towards love. It's letting go towards joy. It's letting go towards, and think of a hot air balloon. We're just clipping a couple of the cords to elevate so that it's not a rocket fuel, jet getting ready to take us to space and not knowing what the heck we're going to find.
Right.
Okay. So now, if now we elevate, and in due time you go, cut all the cords. Are you kidding me? Let's go. Clip, 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 clip. That's letting go to then purpose, much bigger things that matter. That's when the reframe occurs going, that's interesting. From what was holding me back is now give me the opportunity to let go to what my potential is. Let go to what's possible. Let go to something much higher order.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautifully put. I've often said what brings us to our knees is what allows us to rise higher than we've ever thought possible. And that's exactly it. It's like, now we're flying.
Now we're flying. The hot air balloon's moving, right? And then it's like, the next thing is like, hey, this is kind of fun, but this is slower than I expected. Can we move on to the jet now? And then after the jet, and we go, holy cow, this is cool. This is fast. Anyway, we go to the rocket ship, and now we're talking quantum.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I called it quantum access method is because this is the process to literally start understanding quantum in terms of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, quantum understanding, manifestation, all these other things that are these, principles that a lot of people may not, think is woohoo. It's not woohoo, it's science. Okay. Yeah. But when you're running low frequency fear and anger, there's no way that those things can make sense. And it has to be an individual's journey. Okay. And then going back to, again, the letting go piece, did I say once you need to let go, you need to do this, you need to do that? No, because it embeds the problem. It embeds the letting go of the fear. It's like, I don't want you to let go of the fear. What I want you to do is get the learning so that we can let go to the greatness.
Amazing. This is so much more fun than sitting in your office being like, which is clearer, this one or this one? This one or this one? I don't know. Can we just cut the cords and talk about the quantum now? Yeah. I want to respect your time, and I think our time's just about up. Is there any final words, things you'd like to share? There's so much in here I thoroughly enjoyed, and I could keep chatting with you, but
I think my final words go to you. It's, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for trusting every part of you in terms of vision and the family with me. And I think my final words go to you to keep doing what you're doing and share these amazing words and stories and allow others to understand what's possible so that we can create a collective that sees things of possibility and moves away from, what issues are showing up in his life, but looking at them as opportunities of what's possible, especially for the younger demographic. Okay, because one of the things that my passion is under 30 for me is where the global change is going to be happening. So it's through our children and us holding that space as their parents to be able to allow them to see what's possible instead of hearing, "Oh, I'm so worried they're not going to be able to afford this, that, and the other." It's like,
No, that's not
they're,
that's not what it's going to
they're
be.
going to be just fine.
Your book Soul Site is on Amazon. You're at Dr. Nick. No, you're drnick.ca.
So drnick.ca is my coaching website. Mind's Eye Optometry.com is my NeuroVisual optometry practice.
In Toronto.
The book in Toronto. Yeah. The book you can find on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. Yeah, it's more geared towards my coaching side, but I don't get too into the vision optometrically. But it's all connected. It's all connected. And I hope I can inspire people. They could read my story, and I was open and vulnerable, and hopefully it inspires people to understand and being open to their story, but also seeing it in terms of what's possible, not to get caught up in it. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I wish everybody, including you, get to the point where things that happen to you have now moved to happening for you, and eventually can experience the magic of it happening through you, because that's exactly what's happening with me with the book.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, for listening through to the end. As I mentioned at the top of the show, after we were done recording, Dr. Nick said, "Hey, do you want to go through a timeline therapy?" And my initial response was like, "Oh God, no. I don't like any of these things. They get too confronting and too vulnerable," but I agreed. And that you can find only in the inner circle. So if you head over to courageouspivot.com, you will find the show notes with all of the links and resources that were mentioned within this episode, as well as information on how to join the inner circle to get the deeper dive updates, things like this, the timeline therapy, and a few other little bonus extra things that I've created that are not really for the big wide world, just for the inner circle. I want to thank you as always for being here. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your views. I appreciate the emails you send, the feedback you offer. I am thoroughly enjoying doing this show, and knowing that you are also gaining great benefit from it is deeply meaningful to me. Thank you again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of this community. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and we will connect again next week.